and a warm welcome back to the KC YouTube channel. I'm doing a different piece of content today. I have Mr. Scant with me, one of the most prolific people in South African esports. I'm a big fan, and he's now noticed me, guys. He noticed me first. Scant, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better ever since I followed you on Twitter. Um,
Ah, dude, that was my day
get
so made. I was like, I don't know what I have to do to get this man to follow me. I've been doing everything, but it turns out swearing about racism was the thing for you, hey, Scant.
yeah, I mean that's something that always catches my interest. I'm like this, God, I don't know how to say it. I want to be honest about the role that I've played, but I also don't want to be like one of these like white saviory kind of people. But like anyone who's been on the Dota scene for a long enough time will tell you that I've been sort of shouting into the wind about racism and stuff like that forever, for like over 15 years in the SA scene. And so it always catches my interest when I see other people doing that and like standing up for that. And especially when the people aren't white. And it's like, because then you guys got real like skin in the game and you like putting yourselves out there and taking those risks and like taking on the abuse of. I mean, I don't think any people of color should ever have to like deal with these like flagrant like no, actually the K word's okay people that you get in the South African Dota scene.
Dude, the honest worst thing I ever, like the most disgusting thing I saw was the one day I think Snare posted a thread recently about the racism he experienced in the game, somebody calling him a K word and stuff. And there was literally people in the Dota 2 SA group telling him he deserved to be called it. What did he do in the game? And I was like, yo, you people need some reality checks. But just a little bit more background into Scant before we go in. All the Dota people in SA will know who Scant is because he's a fucking legend. But like, the rest of the peeps, this man has worked overseas as a coach for Fnatic. He's worked as major broadcast talent as well. Think about the two GESCs. Don't you think about it, Scant, because you never got paid for that shit. But yeah, he's a guy who's been out there in the real world of esports overseas. But in South Africa, I mean, he's literally one of the OGs. Like from the get go, the start, he was there. And actually, that's what we have you here to speak about today. He's gonna give us the whole history of a lot of things. But for now, we still doing the icebreakers. You know, Scant.
Yeah. By the way, I coach Mineski, not Fnatic. Although I almost coached Fnatic a few times. So I just don't want to mislead your viewers.
Sorry, I
They
thought
were
you coached Fnatic for a while, but that was actually Kips at the start of her career. I'm
yeah.
confusing
I
things.
mean, I was asked to coach Fnatic a few times. I never quite took them on for various. I mean, sometimes I was like mental health reasons, like I wasn't well enough to do it. The one time when I was at Mineski, they tried to poach me, and I was like, actually no, I'm loyal, which obviously today I regret massively because Mineski ended up being like a absolute fuck show. But yeah,
Loyal
I could.
team
I mean,
esports. That's a big mistake right
yeah,
there, Scan.
I could bore you with stories about what could have been and what I almost did in my career and what I did and didn't do, but that's not really what we're here for today.
We have a goal, we have a purpose. We'll get into it. We'll get into it for sure. Okay, so yeah, let me just throw straight into that stuff. So sorry about the miss thing, but Mineski's still a big org. Fnatic, y'all lost out not hiring this man is all I'm saying.
They know, they know, they know.
They know. But yeah, the thing we got Scan to talk about here. So everybody knows me right now as the guy who talks about racism in SA scene. I don't know how I got known as this, just because I made 2 videos. In fact, if that's what we get known for after 2 videos in the scene, that shows the fucking problem right there. But Scant, I spoke to him. You reached out to me the other day, and you were like, "Listen, yeah, I like what you're doing." And me and Scant were having a conversation, and a lot of what I was saying seemed to have resonated with you. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but one big aspect I think that you can really share from your perspective that I could not give to the viewers, I think would really help people, is that how we got to where we are now. Obviously, we're not going to go through the entirety of South African history. Y'all should do that on your own time, and I'm not the person to do that. Remember, I'm a fucking gaming person. But like, the way we are, where we got today, doesn't seem like an accident, right? Because obviously South Africa has a racist past, etc., etc. But like, how the gaming community molded today for people in the likes of the ZA Dota 2 group to say, oh, let's keep this apolitical. You know what? You deserve to be called the K word. Oh, let's laugh and put gifts and all of these fucking drama crybabies. How we got to people thinking like that today, in my opinion, I intuitively felt like it wasn't an accident, but I feel like you can give a better explanation about how we actually got there, that in terms of factual history. I don't know how I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, sure. So like from the most zoomed out perspective, what I would start by saying is that when I started when the local Dota scene started in Dota 1, I started around I think 2003. The early servers, we used these PvP gen servers. There was one called Reason, one called Gosu, and then the most well-known one eventually was called Twilight. Um, around that time was like not too long after the end of that was like 10 years post apartheid, or not even, you know. And I think that it's now been well established that 1994 apartheid ended maybe legally, but like did it really end in other ways, socially, economically, not so clear. And I think that what I witnessed and what a lot of people around that time witnessed is that spaces like online gaming, in particular Dota, which was like super anonymous and easy to hide you who you are, were actually spaces where people, explicitly racist people, could sort of like unleash their racism with no fear of reprisal, because no one was going to take legal action. It was really hard to do that. No one even knew who you were half the time. But even more than that, the dominant attitudes were like, who cares? And I think that's a big part of what we need to talk about today. So my experience when I was playing Dota 1, I was like super into this game. I quickly got addicted. We all have that story, whatever. And I was also someone I had, I guess, the strong convictions in like moral justice, or I guess I come from this family of like my older brothers are both like activists, and I've just always thought about this kind of stuff. I studied philosophy at university, and so I would argue with the administrators on those servers about like, we need to do this, we need to do that, and eventually they got tired and made me into one. And I realized in retrospect that the main reason they made me an admin is to like get me off their back. It was like a strategic decision. It wasn't because they like liked me or whatever.
Right.
I mean, the whole setup of those old servers was this kind of, the two main admins of Twilight were Ganymede and Serenity. And Serenity's little brother Nitrate, and Ganymede's little brother Copyright. And then like the two little brothers had friends, and that's where you get to like SVH and Demonic and all these other people you've heard of. But
So wait, before you carry on, so you're telling me nepotism has been part of South African esports from the beginning? I'm shocked.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
shocked.
mean, it's absolutely built into the fabric of how
Uh,
the Dota scene worked back then. And what's more is like, so I was one of the few people who took. There used to be these forums, right, where people like would post screenshots of people behaving badly, and then the admins will decide what to do about you.
mm,
And before I became an admin, racism wasn't even considered a bannable offense. Like, there was a list of what the offenses were. Racism wasn't there. So like, when I became an admin, I sort of just added it there because they just gave me privileges in the forum, and I just started editing the rules and stuff. And it wasn't like one of these situations where the admins would have some meeting to discuss, because most of the guys didn't care, or they weren't there half the time. So if you're active, you just kind of decide what to do. So I thought, cool, I've got the power, I'm going to make changes. And so I like made racism a bannable offense. I encouraged people to post about it. People did start for a long time in Dota 1. They were posting people for racism. And then I would like lock their accounts. Okay, you can't play. And maybe you can make a new account, but it's going to be hard because like there was like a level system and all these other things that you need a certain level to get into certain lobbies, etc., etc. Um, the thing is, though, what I noticed very quickly, and this is the sad part of the story, is that most of the time I banned people for racism, they would within a week be unbanned by other admins. And so what I realized is there was this whole kind of scam of like, well, they'd made me into an admin to just keep me quiet and make me feel like I was doing something to pacify me. Well, in the meantime, those admins, a lot of them were actively racist. Either they were actively racist or they just didn't care. And so you had, for example, I mean, I'll use names. There was this admin called SVH.
mm.
His name is Stephen Van Heerden, and that's what SVH stands for. And he was good friends with a player that you would have heard of, Doms, who back then was called Dominator. That's what Doms is short for.
Former
And Doms
WNBA
used
player.
Right, so now Doms used to spout racist stuff all the time. He used to drop K bombs in pub games like every day, every other day. And so I would ban him, and then within a few days, his friend SVH would unban him. And there was this kind of like little dance we'd do, and it would happen over and over and over again. And there was never a conversation. There was never like a debate about it or like a process about it. It was just simply like, you can do whatever you want as long as you have the right friends. Like, obviously, there are some people who are banned for racism who never got unbanned because they didn't know any of this admin. But I don't want to say that all of the original admins in Dota 1 were like hardcore racists, but I can say that none of them showed any sort of active desire to do anything about it except for me. And just to be clear, these are all white people, right? They're all like, in fact, they're all white men, every single one of them, right? The whole system of white men who like either themselves are actively racist or are like at best sort of indifferent to the fact that there's like constant racism in all of the games. Local South African Dota games is it's I mean, it is how it is now. It was like that then. I'll give you some other examples, like when we're moving now from Dota to Dota 2 or Han or League of Legends or whatever. There's this guy called do you know Robert Hako, Rage Boss?
Yeah, I
I
remember
mean,
him.
now he has a reputation for bad behavior and flaming and stuff, but you know the level of racism that he expressed at that time, like the amount of shit he'd have got into if it was like done in public. Or so Han comes out, right, and I'm not playing Han, but I've got this reputation in South Africa as the guy who like bans racism.
Right.
So Rage Boss makes an account on Han using my name, Scant, just for the purpose of sitting in rooms and dropping K words. You know, that's I mean, and now this. I mean, that guy went on to be like one of our top pros. Like I said, Doms was also like, and obviously there've been these other guys now, ACG and them who like. But my point is like that's not a new thing. The only thing that's new is like the process has sort of changed. There's a bit more visibility about it. People like brands are reacting differently. There are some people of color who are more actively involved in the scene, like yourself, like Snare. Um, that's the stuff that's different. But you go back to square one, you go to Dota 1, the racism was just as bad. People were actively part of it, or they didn't care about it. Um, and then I suppose the final step is we get to Dota 2, and it becomes a Facebook group. And this is where all the action is these days, right? Dota 2 South Africa. Um, and that group was made by a guy called John Atwell. And John Atwell, who I think is still the head admin of the group, although I believe he might be AFK,
I think
I'm not sure.
Ben runs that group now. In
Yeah.
Knoxville.
So I mean, so what happened? So when John made the group, he made Ben an admin as well. The two of them were the only two admins, but John was like the big boss, and Ben was like some guy who John asked to help out. You know, whatever.
Lucky.
Um, and within the first year of making that group, there started being posts about racism, inevitably because there's so much racism, inevitably. And John took a very, very hard line that we will not be talking about racism in this group. That's what he said. He made a very clear post about it one day. He said, this group's not for politics. We don't want you guys discussing these issues here. Go somewhere else. So I was one of the people then who argued with him about it. He didn't want to budge on it. And I ended up making another group. That's the reason there's two Dota 2 South Africa groups. And the group that I made is smaller because, I mean, ultimately I guess I moved on to other things. I was working in the international scene. I'd lost interest. I didn't like actively go out of my way to promote it or try and like poach users from the bigger group. But the reason that it's there is because that was what was needed at the time. If you wanted there to be a public space for South African Dota players to talk about racism in Dota, you needed to make a separate space just for that, because the default space was sort of explicitly against that.
Right.
And so you see, it's a kind of a continuation of like the Dota 1 admins who were like, well, who the fuck cares about that stuff? In fact, if you ban people for racism, we're just going to unban them. And then you get to Dota 2, and you've got this guy who makes a Facebook group. And I mean, by the way, John Atwell wasn't like an important person in the Dota scene. He was just the guy who decided to make the Facebook group.
Right.
And unfortunately for us, he was like, you know, some white liberal dude who thought that racism will just go away if we don't talk about it or something like that. And so that group, like now I see, and this is like the stuff you've been talking about. There's been a bunch more posting about racism in that group in the last year or so. I think that is probably not a coincidence that John Atwell has sort of gone AFK and doesn't really look at it anymore, and he's in some other part of the world and doesn't play Dota and doesn't care about it. I mean, I can't know. Maybe he'll watch this video and he'll come and say, you know, his views have changed, blah blah blah. But when I saw your videos, one thing that struck me was that like there's a kind of progress just in the sense that like as terrible as the debates and arguments about racism happening in that group are, they're being allowed to happen at all.
That's what I also was saying. Sorry to cut you off here. Is that like the first video I made? I honestly that was like a blog for me. I didn't think I was gonna get a reception. I thought I was gonna get hate mail because I was making fun of white farm murderers. Like not the people complaining about them, not the actual murders, of course, because they're horrible. But like, so I didn't think that would get any following. I thought I was gonna get hate for it. I thought like it was like almost like my goodbye video to esports because I was just so fed up at this point. But then because I already was just mad at that point personally. But by the time I made the second video, I had to like I said it in that video and I still acknowledge it here today, is that Dota 2 SA, like there's so many disgusting comments that happened there. Putrid posts, disgusting comments, horrible users, no debate, no doubt about it. But like I do think that I said it in my video and I'll say it again, is that they're actually ahead of the rest of the esports curve because we're actually willing to have the conversations. I mean, I saw a conversation that happened in the COD Warzone group where somebody was literally calling Nick Holden a C word, that women can be even more toxic than, like, this was like a quote unquote valid post for this guy, and it's like, as bad as Dota 2 SA is, our conversation has at least progressed past that for a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, there are questions that need to be asked about the positions of people who have power to make change, whether they're using the power responsibly, whether they're doing everything they can, whether they should be doing more.
Just now.
But what I would say is that for me, as someone who was very involved and hasn't been as involved in recent years, when I look at how things look now, people like you and Snare and you know, like, the progress that's happened is you guys. You are the progress. And sometimes it's like, it might be hard for you to see that because you look at the situation and you don't see yourself, you see the situation. And the situation minus you probably just as grim as it was before. But now you're there. Now there's a bunch of you guys there who are sort of saying these things and engaging and interacting and trying to call this stuff out. And hey, actions have been taken. You know, like, I could mention so many professional players or competitive players, I suppose would be fair to say, back then from Dota 1 or early Dota 2 in South Africa, who were dropping K bombs and no one cared.
Right.
And now at least, like, when someone gets outed, that sort of ends their competitive career. That's what's been happening, it seems, and that's what should be happening. And so there's sort of like the consequences are catching up. I mean, if someone in South Africa had just kind of gone out in public dropping K words all the time, there'd already have been consequences for that. I mean, we see that, and especially with the rise of social media. And I think in some sense, Dota's been behind because it's started off as this kind of like, almost like a mini little 4chan, you know, like a nice place for people to anonymously go and stew in their like hateful bigotry. And it's gradually over time had to come to terms with the fact that actually, like, this is still a space that human beings occupy. This is still a space where you have to treat people as human beings with respect and not be a bigoted asshole. And I mean, it's even telling that I'm the person that you want to talk to about the history of racism in South African Dota. Like, isn't there like a black person to talk to about that? Well, the answer is probably no, because I don't think anyone has, you know, there's no black person who was playing Dota 15 years ago in South Africa who would have made it this far. Like, it's just no way. You know, it's like, and that's the state of things, right? It's just like the level to which it's been utterly casual to be racist in the space is appalling. It's like completely outrageous. And so what I think I see changing is that at least there are some people like yourself who are sort of setting a kind of new moral compass for the space, so that even though like it's still very normalized and people are still behaving very badly, there's some kind of like abstract sense of like, well, this is actually not right. We shouldn't, like, I think I would have to guess that some of the people saying these things at least are more aware of the fact they shouldn't be saying them, and it's about like them battling with like their built-in habits and that kind of stuff.
For sure, like, I think I can give real like world examples. Like, again, like in that first video I made, I was super mad. I was like, yeah, we fucking did nothing last year. We had all the information, all of that, but we actually didn't do nothing. We really didn't do nothing, because if I see this year, now there's some racist things going on right now as well. Not going to comment too much about that stuff directly at this point, but just seeing the conversation that's being had between the communities, from the players, VS Gaming actually sending a fucking message in their Discord. Wow, applaud to them for doing the bare fucking minimum in just like talking about, like, saying they're aware of the issue, forget even talking about it or anything. And I think like the conversation has definitely progressed. Like, people know. One important thing that's different now than to last year or those years we're talking about going through history, people now know it's not fucking okay, which is, it's great. That is progress in its own right to a certain extent.
I mean, it's a very low bar, right?
Right.
You know,
No, the bar is fucking down to the bedrock of the,
you know, like
digging in Minecraft, you know.
For us to be like, wow, this community that exists within South Africa that had hundreds of years of colonialism and, you know, 50 plus years of apartheid, we only took 20 or 30 years after apartheid to like recognize that racism is probably wrong. Like, well done us. You know, like,
the thing is, the sad thing is that the conversation isn't even about racism yet. It's that we still have to try explain to people that using the K word is bad. Like, you're talking about it earlier, and it's like, how backwards do we have to be to as a scene to realize that players getting banned for 1 or 2 years or 6 months or whatever for using the K word, proven to be used, is like the not even a slap of the wrist. That's like saying, go sit in your room, I'll bring you a tea and just relax for a bit. Because that's a fucking jail level offense here. Like, the reality that these people are seeing in a way, and that like the woke SAW leftist cucks like us are seeing, it's completely different. Like, honestly.
I mean, there was another. I'll tell you something. There was another influence which I've just remembered now,
Mm.
all the way back from Dota 1, which is that players who are really good at the game always had a kind of immunity of like they can behave badly because administrators generally felt like we're a small scene, we care about development, we want to like go compete internationally or whatever, and we just can't afford to like, we can't afford to be banning our best players, that kind of thing. And there's this weird kind of like, I don't know, nationalism about it of like,
Stupid as hell.
right. And that's something that, I mean, I'll tell you now, like the best Dota player in South Africa right now used to have a very offensive nickname. And like I played in a team with him when he had that name, and I said to him, I don't want to play with you unless you change your name. And he didn't understand. I mean, he changed his name, but I guarantee you, he changed his name because like other people convinced him maybe he should change his name, not because he like did some reflection about what his name meant or
right.
And so it's like there's so many layers to the development that needs to happen. I do think that, I've been asked more and more recently. Like I'm sure you saw ATK announced that I'm supposed to do a seminar for their players and their staff. That hasn't happened yet, but I've been asked to do stuff like that. And one of the things I've thought about a lot is that, I could teach people like introduction to philosophy, introduction to ethical theories. I could go through like popular ethical theories with them, and I probably will do that when I run a seminar. But all of the popular ethical theories agree that racism is unethical. It's not like it depends which theory you choose. It's not like it depends what your point of view on ethics is. Like they all agree racism is bad. And I think that where the debate is happening these days is more that there seems to be a very strong disagreement and widespread disagreements in our society about what actually constitutes racism. And so you get your people who say, well, the K word's not that bad unless you have the requisite intention. Like, well, I didn't, all I meant was idiots, or, which, I mean, that, or things like that. Or there's people who you don't understand that, like, normalizing rape culture is harmful, or like, microaggressions, or.
Right.
So I think that the progress is in the sense that there's a general consensus on like, well, yeah, sure, we shouldn't be racist. That's not something we don't want that label to apply to our group. But what does that actually mean? That's a discussion that there needs to be more of. And honestly, I mean, maybe I'm cynical, maybe I'm defeated because I've been in the space so long. But I think that where that discussion's happening, you'll find that it's dominated by people with like fairly regressive and conservative takes on what it means. Like don't assault a black person for being black. That's how you avoid being racist. Like
I'm doing
that's
a bare minimum by not driving over the black person on the sidewalk in my Hilux Bucky. I'm not racist, bro. I didn't do that this morning.
yeah, exactly. But I do think that I will say that the broadly accepted views of what constitutes racism in our society have undergone quite a lot of change in the last 5-10 years, especially with like student protests, roads must fall and fees must fall and stuff like that. There has kind of been a revolution in how people think about these things, and quite a lot of people are lagging behind in their mindsets, who maybe they're not reflective people, maybe they're not people who like university educated or were even around this kind of context. And so like these kinds of like the enlightened understanding that racism involves power dynamic, and so it's not the same for a white person to be prejudiced towards a black person as it is for a black person to be prejudiced towards a white person. Now that requires like a certain level of thinking about it and understanding that, well, the power dynamic's different, and what's really important here is the power dynamic.
Right.
And I think that the average sort of Dota 2 South Africa person just hasn't spent an awful amount of time thinking about any of that stuff. And they're kind of, and I suppose this goes back to the beginning of what we were talking about. A lot of the time, these people are just sort of uncritical reflections of the things they've heard at home. And when think about what they've heard at home, think about what like a young person right now has heard at home. Well, their parents are like apartheid white people, like,
Right.
I mean, that's So behind closed doors, those people are still saying racist things by and large. And then these people come to a space where they feel like it's safe for them to say those things, and they say them. And it's not even like a moral consideration for them. They're not even thinking like, is
Right.
this good? Is this bad? It's just they just think it's normal, you know?
I think like a couple of like a big issue I see that I think that serves South African this serves South African society at large is people's misunderstanding of racism. I think if like I'm gonna address it here within the gaming context and my content and stuff, like just seeing how people relate to my content and stuff, and like some of the comments I get and stuff, and it's like I think people perceive racism as prejudice, which for me is a big mistake. Racism is not the same as prejudice. Like I'll give a good example from a different context here. It's like when we say there's sexism that exists in the workplace, it's not because I'm a woman and Scant's a man and we're working in the workplace and Scant's getting paid 20,000 for a job and I'm getting paid 15,000 for a job. That's okay. It's fucked up situation in this workplace or whatever. That's prejudice towards Scant or whatever. But on average, South African average is that your lowest paid individual, and this is all professionals doing the same job, is your black female, and your white man is getting paid literally double what that person makes. That's on average across the country in every single business. That right there, motherfuckers, is sexism because it's a systematic issue, right? I don't know if like this is like a very basic explanation about like of a systematic issue. For something to get an ism is that means it's not just isolated incident. It's not just ACG saying the K word. It's not just I'm getting paid less than Scant because I'm brown or because I'm a woman or something. It's that the entire system is made in a way that fucks a certain demographic and rewards the other demographic. And that right there is like that's what constitutes racism or sexism, etc. From my understanding, at least.
Right. Oppressive systems are generally like it's easy to think about them as pyramids, I think. Like you often see people posting these graphics. I remember a couple months ago when we were having a kind of Me Too movement in the international Dota scene, people posting these pyramids showing that, you know, at the bottom of the pyramid there's like making slightly sexist jokes. And like you think, well, making slightly sexist jokes is not a big deal. Or maybe you think just listening to someone else make a slightly sexist joke, not a big deal. But like one step above that is maybe inappropriate flirting, and one step above that is maybe ignoring, not respecting boundaries or not respecting consent, and then all of a sudden you get to the top and it's like full blown sexual assault and rape. But the point is that each step of the way, the lower down stuff kind of facilitates, enables, and normalizes it, right? And so it's like, sure, like there's a difference between a one person uttering one K word and like the legislated system of apartheid, you know, but like that doesn't mean that like it's not part of it, you know, like the fact that, so what you're describing, you know, like black women get paid much less than white men, like part of that is that on like a normal basic interpersonal level on a daily basis in South Africa, black people and women are treated as worse than white people and men,
Yeah, I
you
mean
know.
that study I was
And
talking about was literally the people working the same jobs, degreed professionals actually.
yeah, and so it's like obviously like there's more going on than, and I think this is like it's a really important observation. It's the kind of thing you need to get racist people to sort of reflect on if we want them to change. That like you can't only be thinking about whatever's in front of you as though it's an isolated incident. Like you need to understand that it's part of like a greater system, that there's power dynamics at play,
Right.
that your actions exist within a certain context and
For
have a
sure.
certain meaning.
It's like when I
And
try kind of
people,
say, sorry to cut you off there, but like that's what I'm trying to like the point I'm trying to also hammer home is that okay, so one person says a racist thing is like when I try to explain the systematic part about it in Dota 2 context in South Africa, one person says the K word, it goes on the Dota 2 group. This is a jailable offense, right? Now, what is our community reaction to that? There will people be saying, this is bad, this ban him, this whatever. There's a lot of people who just don't give a fuck calling it drama. There's other people saying that this person deserved to be called the K word. There's like all this discussion going on. So now the community consensus is not that saying K word is bad. It's all this other fluff to it. And all that other fluff is what protects X person saying racist thing, which makes it not just prejudice or whatever. Obviously, we have the long history, etc. But from the Dota 2, like this is from the Dota 2 aspect of how we fucking contribute to the racist system, is that we're protecting the motherfucker who's saying the racist thing as opposed to the person being harmed by it, which is a massive issue. Like, I don't think y'all are seeing the scale of this problem. Like, how we are still here in 2020 boggles my fucking mind. But yeah, we try putting the work, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of the reason for that, by the way, is that the person who would most be harmed by Dota players using K words in Dota games are people of color in those games, and we don't hear very often from those people. So part of the reason is because a lot of those people just aren't there. You're a person of color, you come play Dota, you see this racism, you get out of there. Part of the reason is that if you want to survive, you pretend, you hide your identity if you want to just exist in the space. But I guess there's an extent to which the victims are less visible, and that makes the perpetrators feel like, well, I'm not really hurting anyone, But
I mean,
what they're actually doing is,
yeah.
we're in a country where 90% of people aren't white. White people are 10% of the population, but in Dota, white people are 99% of the population. Why? Why should it be that way? Like, you can talk about like economic situation, you can talk about like most like black people being poorer on average, but come on, there's enough middle class black people in South Africa for there to be middle black Dota players. There are, of course, there are. And something funny is the only organization that I've ever seen try to do something about this did it in the most dishonest, demeaning way possible. It was the MSSA. Now, I'm sure you've heard tons about the MSSA and their corruption, and I mean, I've had terrible dealings with them. They tried to sue me once, but they would use it. They would kind of weaponize it. They'd say, what would happen with them is like, I was the national team captain for the South African Dota team. They tried to send us to League of Legends tournaments, and we were like, well, no, we're Dota players. That's a different game. And then they would lobby these kind of threats. They'd say, well, then we're just going to get diversity people. We're just going to get random black kids to do it instead. And like, some of the times they did do that stuff. And like, I think there's some positive value in like getting people of color into these spheres. But when you weaponize it in that way, and it's similar to what you see, I think I've talked to you about this recently. Like, at some point in the last year, you had these like local pro players who were like they would like store up their like K words of other pro players so they can like fire shots at them strategically. And then you totally like lost sight of what it's all about. It's become like your own like instrumental use for like settling some petty squabble, or when actually it's not about any of like white person X versus white person Y. Like, the problem with racism is about the harm that we're causing and perpetuating with respect to people of color, So it's
sorry, finish your thought there. I have a funny story to tell you actually after you done.
Well, I mean, I would really like to see some number of organizations involved in the local esports scene trying to do something about the upliftment of people of color, trying to do something about like being more inclusive, trying to do something about how do we appeal to a wider audience. And I mean, another interesting thing that people talk about, but it's the throwaway excuse is always that like lots of black people are poor. But you know what? I worked in the fucking Philippines. It's a very, very poor country. In fact, half of the Dota players, most of the Dota players there are very, very poor as well. Now, culturally, there's different solutions. For example, they have very cheap internet cafes. Now, I'm not sure if that's a viable thing that can happen in South Africa, but the point is that if you're actually creative and if you actually try and think about like designing systems that incentivize more inclusive makeup of demography or whatever, you can find ways to do these things. Like, it's crazy to me to think that we're going to be going into like now the next generation of gamers, and there's still going to be a bunch of white dudes, even though South Africa is not just white dudes.
Dude, it's so stupid from a business perspective, right? Like, honestly, I've had actually a few of these conversations in the Esports Central podcast before. We have Icasi, I don't know if you know of Icasi Esports, is they're a team based in Soweto. They run the Tech Fest and things, and it's like, I actually laugh when I'm bogged down on like the first step you're trying to address with the racism, but like, I mean, like the abhorrent racism, I'm bogged down trying to deal with that. But like, I want to now progress this conversation forward as well, because honestly, from a business point of view, this dumbass fucking model they have is not sustainable. Why would you want to cater to the fucking the 10% of the country only? Like, it's so stupid. It's like, no.
But you know what you'll see? Every year you'll see at Rage that all of these companies that are involved in the local gaming scene, they're going to make sure that they find some perfect branding opportunities to get a photograph with their brand and some black kid, right?
For sure.
But and then if you say to those companies, well, what are you actually doing to improve the access to these games or these spaces for people of color? This is going to be a big question mark. It's like,
dude, so bad. It's so fucking bad. Because like, this is the thing for me, right? I don't know how. So no globally, let's not knock South African companies solely. Globally, nobody really makes money in esports. This is just facts, right? But South Africa is a country where, like, we cater. Like, when you have 200 people on stream, if you're the owner of Metal State, I mean, I'm not going to use VS Gaming as an example because they're fucking incompetent and they got Talcom money coming through the whole time. So they don't have to worry until Talcom pulls the plug. They don't need to make money. But like, if you're the Metal States or the ACGLs or the Nodwins or whatever coming in now, like, you cannot look at the stream numbers, see 200, you just see fucking 95% white people commenting and talking in the chats and ever the same people you saw for the last 10 years and think, hold up, this is okay, this is fine, this is how we're gonna progress. No ways. We have a big market in South Africa that's not being tapped into. There's a reason PUBG Mobile now is like our biggest fucking game. These CSGO guys are crying that PUBG has more prize pool. But like, motherfuckers, the PUBG streams has like 2,000 people on it. You need a reality check. And the problem, I think, in esports also, with a lot of the like the big names and the players, and the Dota 2's already accepted they place on the bottom of the compendium podium now. But like the CS:GO guys and stuff, I think Dota and CS:GO are the worst demographic in in esports because they were told that they mean something. VS Gaming came and said, we're gonna give you guys 500,000 rand prize pools. Fucking ESL Africa came to give these guys million rand prize pools. Arena lied to say they're gonna give 1.5 million rand. So these guys are getting told that they pros, they this, they that already. When it's like, y'all are all tier 5 players. Now it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna do these other efforts. No, that's just charity. These black, like, so just charity. Why you wanna bring like what do they call it in South African sports, quota systems and stuff? It's not about that, motherfuckers. It ain't about that. Like, the fact of the matter is, the people of color that are in the scene have to fight 100 barriers before you guys have to. The reason I am a talent or whatever today is because I was just better than anybody else. I did more work than anybody else. There's like, the difference between me being involved in South African Dota and not being involved is night and day. Nobody casts the games. Nobody makes content for the games. Nobody does anything for the games. It's hilarious, right? So I don't feel like I need to prove anything because my body of work shows that anyways. But like, coming into it, you still have to deal with. I never had to personally deal with people saying, "Oh, this guy's getting a whatever invite or whatever," because the community really liked me initially. But like, I do see it a lot with a lot of other things, and it's pretty crazy. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just see, like, even like Snare for a talent example. Like, there's just genuinely nobody better than Snare on panel in South Africa. I think he could go work at Omega League for We Play tomorrow, and he would make that panel 10 times better. I know I'm his friend, I'm biased or whatever, but like, genuinely, there's nobody that really comes close to him. It's not like we're saying, oh, let's give these like fucking quotas or whatever, like you guys like to complain about the SA cricket and SA rugby and shit. It's about, if you don't be racist pieces of shit, there'd be more KCs and Snares, etc., excelling just because we are also people involved in the scene. It's not only if you're white and have a dick, you know?
Yep.
I went on a bit of a rant there.
No. Praise be to you. Good rant. I mean, I feel like maybe the next step is to start asking the difficult questions to the people with the power, like, and not letting them ignore them. You know, like, people need to be asking these VS Gamings and these MSSAs and these whatever other companies,
right.
What are you doing about this? You know, because there is money. Those guys have money. The MSSA's got money from the National Lottery Fund. VS Gamers got money from Telkom, etc., etc. There's money, but how's it being used for development? You know, there's so, like, I'll tell you something. In North America, there's an increase, like, a very rapidly expanding esports scene at university. Could we have an esports scene in our universities, or could we have one in our schools? Is that a way to tap into a wider, broader base of players? Like, why couldn't we do that? If there's money, why aren't we using some of the money that way?
For sure, I mean, Zen5's owner from Bulgaria and stuff, and the guy had multiple chats with me, and like on the podcast, he's always said this, like, what are we doing, guys? There's all these schools, and South Africa private schools have a shit ton of money. Why aren't we going in there pitching esports? Why aren't we going there saying, let's set up leagues or whatever? Yeah, I mean, like, as an extracurricular activity, imagine you go tell a bunch of 15-year-olds they can play Call of Duty league for on the weekends or whatever instead of going to play soccer. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of outcasts out there who can't play football like me, who would be happy to play Call of Duty. I can't play Call of Duty either, by the way, guys. But you see, there's like opportunities there, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I tell you something, with the generational shift, there are a lot of people my age or a little bit older than me who now have kids in school. Right. And I've heard from a ton of these people, they'd be very happy for their kid to be doing esports as an extramural rather than whatever hockey or, you know, like, because people who have already seen the value in gaming as a pastime will understand that we don't have to have these outdated views of like, oh, my kid's
Mm,
just
mm,
like
mm.
gonna get square eyes or whatever. Like they'll understand that it's a perfectly valid kind of hobby and form of expression and learning experience for a child to have. So I do think there's certainly opportunities, and I think that my cynical view is that there's a lack of people who care. My cynical
Exactly.
view is that the people in power are still people who have known people or people who've been there early, or your typical like middle-aged white dude who's just like somehow become part of the machinery of some ecosystem despite the fact that
Mm.
he's like very medium level of competence. Like uh, that's the stuff that, like, I don't think it is impossible for this stuff to change, but yeah, it probably will require a lot of people to like consistently lobby and push for this stuff, and it's why I got in touch with you in the first place, because I respect what you're doing.
Thank you, man.
Because
I
it can
appreciate
be
it.
it can be the start of something bigger. It can be the start of lots of people making lots of noise.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to always just be one guy making some noise. It can it can expand, and hopefully it will. And I think it's a positive sign that, for example, that ATK approached me to like do some kind of ethics seminar with their team, um, and if we see an increasing number of brands caring about this stuff, look, obviously there's a question about how much they actually care about. Are they genuine, and is it just about marketing, whatever? Like
The
you
problem
you'll
with
be the judge of that.
like I'm happy that ATK approached you. Like I think for the world, it's a case of a net positive, right? I'm not going to dispute that. I'm happy. I supported the thing. I retweeted it. There was a spicy retweet also, but like the thing is for me is that the issue I have with this kind of thing is that um like I don't think that it's commonly understood by like white people in the scene that it's like I know a lot of people who are like really woke and stuff. Like I call out Darren in my first video or whatever. Like I don't think this guy's not racist or anything, his personal life or anything. But the reason I'm calling him out, like I called him out in that one, is because like you guys also like the woke ones need to realize that the other people calling us K words and this and that or whatever, like yeah, you just because you're white and you now know better doesn't mean that they don't know better and you understand why they don't know better and etc. Like we're not like fucking learning objects or some shit. Like Warren will go and say like making fun of people Indians accents and stuff on stream, and now he's gonna do this ethics seminar and things. Great, but like we are not like no, we're not fucking learning this like your lesson should not come at the cost of us, right? That's what I think. Like and I
I,
think
I agree
I
with
think
that.
the seminar is good, like again for the grand scheme of the world. But I think I don't know if it reinforces that mentality of like, okay, now I'm gonna go and learn. Motherfucker, say sorry. I don't want you to learn. I don't give a fuck about you, but say sorry. Like accept that you
I
did shit wrong. You know?
Yeah, you'll get no disagreement from me. I think it's
Yeah.
like super important that people who misbehave uh, show that they account for their
Mm.
bad behavior. It's something that's bothered me in local and international scene a lot,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be easy. I mean, that's another thing I've often thought about. It's like when someone does misbehave and immediately they're like, "Oh, sorry, misclick," or what,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
like because for an apology to be genuine, for accountability to be real, you have to have really like reflected and thought about it and actually made a decision to change something in yourself. And so that kind of work is the kind of work we need to be pushing people to be doing more. So I totally agree with you. I mean, I think
Sure.
I just want to be clear to anyone watching this, if you've gotten this far, like I'm still a white dude, like I'm still privileged in various intersecting ways in my life. And my personal take is that I should use that privilege to subvert, the circumstances that create it. So the fact that I'm a white dude makes it more likely that certain people will listen to me about certain things. Well, then I make sure that when I talk to those people about those things, I say the right stuff to
Right.
them, change their minds. And that's the kind of thing we all should be doing. So I get what you're saying about like, I mean, Darren's actually a friend of mine. I mean, I haven't
My
seen him in
friend
a
too.
few years, but I do understand what you're saying. Like, there's a criticism to be made of people, even when they aren't like actively bad, just
Yeah.
because when you exist inside a system that gives you a certain kind of privilege, you should feel a certain kind of responsibility to actively go and do something about it, to actively go and uproot this shit. And I mean, we really like the way it should look when someone posts a screenshot of someone using the K word in Dota 2 South Africa on Facebook. It should be like every person responding with
Mm.
condemnation. That's
Mm.
what it
Mm.
should
Mm.
be. They really shouldn't be, it should be like an utterly fringe neo Nazi who's like, well, actually, this is all right.
We need to
And it's
evolve from that being a situation of debate, basically.
yeah. I mean,
uh,
it shouldn't be a debate. And I mean, I guess we've jumped around a lot, but I think
yeah.
part of one of the points I made earlier, and part of why I think it still is a debate, is because a lot of people, their privileges sort of allowed them to not have to engage with this stuff, not have to reflect on this stuff, not have to have anything but a extremely superficial understanding of it. And I think that most of the racists in the South African Dota scene, at a very superficial level, probably agree racism is bad, probably don't think of themselves as racist, probably don't want to be racist. But it's the superficiality of that. It's like the minuscule amount of time they've actually put into trying to understand, what are systems of power, what are systems of oppression, what does racism actually mean,
Mm,
um, and how it means a lot more than just like some explicit hate crime against a particular black person.
yeah.
Um, so that kind of education, I think, can be useful, and hopefully more of it can be achieved, and hopefully um, the people like you being more visible and being loud and being consistent uh, can also sort of maybe act as a trigger, as a catalyst to get people to be like, well, hell, maybe I should think about this stuff,
Yeah. Like, I actually want to comment on that your thing about, like, because I know we spoke about this before, and even like throughout this interview, we've been kind of putting on like, what are the people in charge doing about it? And actually, before I even get to that, I want to say something on like the flat line, and I'm really hard on this. Is that my goal? Like, I come across mad and shit or whatever in my video. That's just my personality. Genuinely, Snare once told me that the favorite thing he loves about me is that I always come across as a dick. So fuck you, Snare, you bitch ass. But the thing is, for me, is that I don't want, like, what my goal is when I see even the fucking worst of the worst K bomber, right? Is I want reform. I want this guy to understand why he's wrong. I want him to do better, and then from there we've done a service to the world, right? Because right now the sad fucking reality, if we look at the gaming scene in South Africa and even overseas to a certain extent, we are net negative to the fucking world. How many people throughout SA, like, yeah, we were talking about this before the podcast started. There's clans called like KKK. There's a clan in South Africa with the swastika. This is not like low tier race. This is like fucking abhorrent, like so clear. So this is the shit we're contributing to the world. When we go into the games and we say K words or this or whatever, what we contributing is more racism to the world. I mean, internationally, the Me Too movement in esports was like, it's something really affected me a lot personally. It was actually really crazy. And like, how is any of the shit we do worth it if half the fucking population don't feel safe to engage in it, right? Like, for me, that isn't worth it, and I'm gonna be a hardline on it. If I have to see Dota tournaments where there's 15 races playing against each other, that tournament should not happen. Like, I ain't budging on that shit. But like, the point I'm trying to make is that, like, we need to be better, right? That's what the goal is. We need to be better. Like, I don't have a voice like fucking, like, I ain't Angela Davis or some shit gonna be talking about like the next level top tier racism, whatever. I'm just a guy who plays games and shit, same as y'all. But I can see there's some issues in the scene, and I like to fix things in the context, or try better the context I'm involved in, where I have the small modicum of power, right? So that's my perspective, and I don't think I'm a quote unquote community leader. I feel like the only advantage I have is I'm a community member who has access to community leaders. I've worked a lot of events with a lot of the big names. I know the characters, right? So I can kind of bridge that gap. And I think from I look at the leader's perspective is, yeah, I've been calling out a few people and shit, but I'm not calling them out because I want to see these people gone or anything. I said this in my last video. These are the best people for the job. Well, the best people currently for the job. What I'd like to see is them do more than just get the bag, because it's a constant issue in South African esports beyond just the racism thing, is that everybody is just focused on themselves. How does it better my career? How much am I going to get paid here? How good optics is this for me? Like, fuck off with that shit, right? Sure, that's important. You need to further your career. I'm privileged also because I can still stay at home and shit. I don't need the fucking bag, that shit VS gaming paycheck. But at the same time, right, I don't think that excuses y'all from being vocal about shit. When Chad was called racist, right, the amount of people who stayed quiet. I mean, we had fucking official proof. We had interviews with him. We had fucking tournaments taking hardline stances. There's no easier time, even for your fucking career and your clout, motherfuckers, to say hashtag no to racism. This is bad. We got to do better, guys. You don't have to say fucking, just say no. That's it.
Yeah.
How hard is that shit? Like, How many fucking opportunities are you guys gonna get to fail the fucking majority of this country, right? Like, yo,
Yeah, I
yo,
mean,
yo, just be a little better. It's genuinely not hard.
some of those guys probably feeling guilty. I mean, my read would be like, well, I don't want to. They're not going to come out publicly saying no to racism because they've done the same stuff that he did, you know. um, but
I don't think they
I,
did.
I
That's
want
the thing. I think the problem is that these people have this attitude from me knowing them, right? Knowing the people who run the tournaments, knowing the top talent, etc. They have the attitude that they are better than this. They're not the same as this. I've seen these people post on their one-page essays on their Facebook pages about white privilege and this and that. So if you're woke enough to know about that shit, you're also woke enough to know that you should say K word bad. Yeah, you know personally, but how much of your fucking followers and stuff know? Not that many. Not that many. Sorry to cut you off there.
no, I mean,
You got the
no, I
floor
mean
right
they
now.
totally agree. I totally agree with you. They all should be doing it. And I notice. I know. I mean, we notice the people who don't say things. You know, those people who would rather defend their own personal clout, would rather not say something too polarizing, would rather protect their followers than put their hats in the ring. There's one thing I wanted to say, which I just I think a possible useful framing, and I think it's something you were getting at before you got sort of worked up again, is that like we are like there's this impression that us social justice warriors or whatever, we just want to be angry and rage and tear things down and burn down this stuff, and like I mean, look, to some extent that is part of what we want, but like actually there's a sort of constructive aim here, and I think a useful way to frame it is for me is to think the role that Dota played in my life. um it ended up being bad and good for me, but I ended up with a career in it that's more complicated. But Dota just as a game, when I played as a teenager, to some extent saved my life. I was in a dark place. My family background was really complicated and damaging. There was a lot of violence in my household growing up. I was depressed. I was numb. I didn't know how to interact with people, and I found this game that was a complete escape that took me out of all of that, and it was beautiful and complex, and I could just dive into it. And I guess the question to ask people is, shouldn't we want everyone to be able to have that? Shouldn't we want everyone to be able to have a space where they can feel safe and welcome and unjudged, and where they can feel like they've escaped all the shit in their lives? And that's in some way, that's all we really ask, right? That you don't have to be a white man to have that experience. That regardless of what your gender or your race or your sexual orientation is, that that Dota could be that for you. And right now it's not like that, because a black person could precisely be trying to escape racism by going into a game and look, more racism. Like, and so it's like, I suppose that's the appeal I want to make to people, to just think about like what this game has been for you, and then think about if you think it's possible that it could have represented the same thing to people who don't have your identity, and why not, and shouldn't we want it to be able to represent such a like beautiful, powerful, valuable thing to anyone? So yeah, that's what I would want anyone who's watching this video to really just spend some time thinking about that. Like, I'm sure that every person who's this deep into the Dota world has got an enormous benefit from this game, and really then it's just a question of, well, believing that everyone should be able to get that benefit.
That's really beautiful, man. Like, honestly, I tried to say the same thing in my last video, but maybe got lost in all my fucks. But like, that's 100% what it is, guys. Is that like right now why I'm saying that a lot of the things we do in South African esports, or even esports globally to a certain extent, just doesn't feel worth it. Is that it's not for everybody. Like, what's the point of something that is only for a small group of people, right? Like, if I'm eating at a family meal. We have a massive 20 people table or whatever. There's food all around here, and I'm the only one I can eat. You know how uncomfortable that would make me feel? Like, I would not eat, even being the fucking, yeah, everybody's seen me eat. I just can't say no to food, but like, I wouldn't be able to eat because it just doesn't feel right. How are you gonna eat in front of somebody who's not allowed to? And it's not like, yeah, you all will, like, the usual thing is like mute and move on and all that. Like, guys, it ain't the fucking same. There's a reason at TI And when we watched the fucking, what is that videos called? The True Sights. We watched it. We were also curious to hear what is Jirak saying to No Tail? What is this one saying to that one? Because it's part of the game. Like, why should your experience be different than our experience? You know, like I think that's the big thing. Like we just like the first consensus I want to get to in terms of like mindset shifts or whatever is that it should not be okay that people are getting different experiences in the first ride. I think like people should it should be a safe space for everybody. You know, like until it is, it just doesn't feel worth it for me. You know.
Yeah. If it has to be a safe space for just one group of people, let it not be the rich white male racists. You know, like come on. Like
I mean, that's
those are
what
the
it
people
is.
who least need a safe space in the whole world. You
Like,
know.
yeah. Shame, let me not knock these people. Don't you know? Wait, I missed the fucking oppression joke. I made a good one the other day when I saw. Oh, did you see that video? Sorry, I'm sidetracking here. Did you see that video of that Chantal, that Instagram influencer, put out there with asking the Siri questions about Black Lives Matter and things?
Oh god, yeah.
And so I'm
Why
gonna.
can't you say white? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, that I got blocked by her, and I retweeted at her. Don't you know, Scant, the true oppression is Siri giving you the Google result of the question you asked? Oh man, I was so proud of that one. I was so proud of that one. But get back to some of the earlier things we discussed, because we went all over here because we both have a lot of shit in our minds. But I think another point you were trying to make on that, like in terms of like the history of how we got to these racist Dota groups and how they enable this shit and stuff, is that not much has changed. Rick Starson, who runs the Zaga group, very active member in the South African Dota 2 group, talking the other day about like how this group needs new management ever, because everybody fucking hated Bucks because he was the one guy who was doing things um about the racism and shit. Like he was really hard on that, which I really respect him about. And I was like, oh, so you're willing to criticize how other people are running their group? I mean, I've seen Zaga. Your members are so toxic that they even leave the Zaga. Like, they're not even just toxic in Zaga. They even have to go be toxic on, like, Cyril's speeches and things. It's, like, so bad. And then I look at this individual. He's a guy who on his personal Facebook group or page wrote, like, a 3-page long essay in all caps about, like, defending the apartheid flag. And it's like, this is still our leaders. Our leaders are still these people. And, yeah, sure, like, a lot of them are not the same as Rick and like are being more woke and whatever. But if you're not distancing yourself, if you're not saying explicitly anything different to what Rick is, and Zaga is the biggest fucking ZA gaming group here, this is the fucking reality you're accepting. We're not here by mistake. This is what I want you industry leaders, you woke ones, to realize, that we got here on fucking purpose. That's what Anthony's also saying, is that if you have to make a conscious decision to change. The status quo is simple. I explained it like CSGO last week. If one team gets orbs every round, the fucking racist, and the other guys are playing with pistols every round, it will never be an equal fight. The system will never fucking change. So y'all with the orbs, decide where you want to be. You want to be anti-racist, or do you want to be supporting the K-word motherfuckers like blasting us down?
Yeah, and you know what? There's another one of the debates that comes up in these spaces often is about merit, and how like competitive gaming is all about merit. We just want the best players, and we shouldn't be thinking about how people look or their representation or their identity. And another thing I sort of want to add in that, and I know this is slightly different to what you're talking about, but
Go for it.
My personal belief is that merit can't exist without representation, which is to say that we want to know who the best Dota 2 player in South Africa is. I mean, right now we could say maybe it's Welp or whatever, but how do we actually answer who's the best Dota 2 player in South Africa if, like, before we even start the experiments, we're limiting it to only looking at like a tiny percentage of the population and how good they could be?
Right.
Imagine like 80% of our population played Dota for at some stage in their life, rather than like 10% of the population. Imagine it was just a normal thing that a teenager spent a year or two trying out this game. Like, how much bigger the pool of players is to find who the best is. And so, like, there's an ethical standpoint, but there's also a competitive one. There's also like a kind of like, if people really are just like, because this is what these guys say a lot of the time, these guys running these big local orgs are, well, we just want to put the country on the map.
Yeah.
Actually, what's going to help putting the country on the map is casting a wider net.
Yeah.
Exactly. Involve more people. Like, that's the way you find more talent as well.
Like, I'm just a kid who likes Dota 2, right? And I don't understand I'm just a kid who likes Dota 2. That's all I'm saying. And I can see the fucking business benefit from having a bigger player pool, from having a more diverse audience in terms of attracting sponsors and brands and thing, in having, like you say, the compare. There's so many fucking positive aspects to not be a piece of shit, basically. That's just like straight up washed away because they so like I don't know why it's like such a people so dearly, and I think that's also like maybe one of the reasons for this, that people are so desperate to hold on to this fucking circle jerk shit we do, is that's what they come from, right? I think like I use Addex for example, not flaming you here, Barry. I'm just saying that you coming from this, you're one of the OG bravado boys. You've grown up from the start of the PC gaming. This is your context. We respect that. But like, is that the fucking pinnacle there? Like, what more are we doing? Yeah, sure, you like hosting a lot of tournaments and stuff. But that's not the point. It's like, what are you doing additional to hosting the tournaments to get a like? I don't know how to phrase it properly. Just to get more people involved, right? It's not enough just doing the baseline, because like we just been saying for the last the hour of this fucking podcast, is that there's so many fucking negative things that we have to counteract. So that it has to be a little bit more done. And I feel like a lot of the TOs have been trying to do this, like, because they also know that this ain't enough anymore. Just from a purely business perspective, that the way the scene is currently set up, it's just this small. How are we gonna get money for this much if we only can justify this much? You know?
If there's no people of color involved in your game, then you're not trying hard enough. It's that simple to me. It's
Yeah.
like, and it's never mind. I mean, I think that would be true even in the US, where like people of color are minority groups. But in SA, where it's like the vast majority, the best Dota player in South Africa is probably a black person. The best Counter-Strike player, the best Fortnite player, the best Overwatch. Like statistically, if everyone had the same opportunities and the same access and this, like, most likely they're all black people, right? And yet we're missing out on all of those people. You know, we're denying them those chances. And there are active decisions that people in positions of power are making that perpetuate that. You know, and they need to stop making those decisions. They need to start making better decisions.
Even if it's just for the fucking like, listen, what do y'all care about? Every business cares about one thing: is the fucking bottom line, right? How much money comes in that account, how much money goes out of the account. For that reason alone, wake up, motherfuckers, because you will definitely get more. Like, we were talking earlier about like things you can do. Man, I will make a challenge to any fucking TO, right? If you go into a school in Lenasia and host a FIFA tournament, if you go into Soweto and Ponya Mall and host a Fortnite tournament, if you go to the places where the fucking masses are and you cater what their needs are, you will have bigger turnouts than we've ever seen before. I mean, I still say it's not a proper, like, quote unquote esport, but the biggest gaming achievement we've ever had in South Africa was the fact that ACGL, I think at 2018 Rage, hosted Fortnite. Like, at the peak of Fortnite's hype, they hosted a tournament with Xbox in the middle of Rage. They had like 60 Xboxes, and like they just had kids coming in playing these like rounds to win Xboxes and things. And it was like very competitive because, I mean, it's just that's what it's like. Fucking, it's literally battle royale IRL in the game as well. And we had 1,800 kids play total that weekend. Like, that's 1,800 new people introduced to competitive gaming. Like, for me, that achievement is the best so far. It's so great. Like, I don't know why we're having 500,000 Rand tournaments for fucking the same 10 CSGO players who've been playing since 2010. How does that change anything? Like, how does that grow your fucking business? It seems silly, and like you'll have the OGs come and talk. We need to show respect to the guys who are here from the start, man. Fuck the respect thing. Tell you guys turnover or profit. Don't talk to me about respect because you're failing as a baseline of your business.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to add there. It's just you've said it all. There's from every level, we need change bottom up, we need change top down, we need to include more people in the grassroots level, we need to challenge more people who have the power, pressure them to use their power to do things, or push them out and take the power from them, and make those better decisions ourselves. There's so much potential for growth and expansion, and for it to represent a positive thing.
Yeah.
Like the way I said, on an individual level, for a particular game, be it Dota or not, to represent such a positive thing in each person's life. and to represent like a a positive thing culturally and socially, and like an opportunity for groups of South Africans to have things that they cherish together and care about and use to interact with each other. There really is. I mean, I know I sound now like one of these like ridiculous marketing people, but like I do think the esports industry provides like the potential for a lot like positive engagement. Um, and it's kind of like what you said earlier, like seems like the South African scene is like mostly net negative at the moment, and
I'm
and
confident
like
to say
that's
that.
fucked up, like that's like there's so much potential to do so much good with this. Like, let's just do it, like, come on,
Like,
please.
if having fucking banners on the side of your FIFA 20s and your Barclays Premier League matches saying hashtag no to racism, if it's good enough for them, why isn't it good enough for us? Which country should know more about race relations than South Africa, right? It's so easy to do in a game. Like, have your banner, like have your stream moderator put hashtag no to racism every time. Like, there's so many little things you guys can be doing that's not being done. And like Scant's point he's trying to make, I honestly think individuals have make such a big difference, right? I mean, you were telling me before that I'm not gonna give the name, but this person's our homie, was saying that like me, you, Snare inspired this person to join Dota again, and this person, I'm gonna actually say the name because I think this makes a big difference in the scene. Like Airy, Cassandra, like you just see how she comments in the Facebook group. Like I think she makes a big difference. Just one individual. I think Jennifer, Pritz, former DGC champion, mind you guys. Like I saw she wrote a post about her experience as a female in South African Dota 2, and like it's so much eye opening stuff, so much things I could be like, holy shit, like that was me. Some of that stuff, like I need to do better now. Like this, individuals make a big difference. Every time she's commenting something there, like she's adding a great perspective. Like I think me with that video I made, the first one, I didn't think I was going to get the reception I was, but there we go. I started a whole conversation with so many people. Like individuals can make a difference. Fucking Trevor tweeting about owners of teams saying racist shit in chat. Like there we go. That's a big difference. His whole community was like interacting, engaging with this. I made a friend, somebody who disagreed with me on my take on this, and we spoke about it. And he's like, "No, I get it. I saw this guy's perspective. I saw your perspective." And now we like Twitter homies. Like we talk about other CS:GO things and things. He told me other couple of things. So individuals, y'all make a difference, right? Like we're a small scene. We know who everybody is. Like we can. It's in our hands to change the shit. Casey putting out a positive message for once out there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I mean, this is important work, and I'm really glad that you're doing it. And yeah, and as much as I can help, I'd really like to keep helping. My life's not as directly connected to the scene anymore, but I do still think about it and check to see what's going on from time to time, and I care about it.
Don't worry, Scant. You
So
played in the
thanks.
Bardo
Yeah.
at once upon a time, so you're an OG for life. I'm just teasing, but yeah, I'm glad for you taking the time to come jump on this. It's been great speaking to you now and always. Hopefully next time we speak, we can talk about like things that got better, not things that got worse. But I'm sure we will be speaking again. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for joining this thing. I appreciate it. Also, people watching this, like I know I'm an aggressive asshole, guys. I really know. That's just who I am. I can't help it. But if you don't like disagree with what I say, but how I say it, good. Go out there and say it yourself the way you think. I'm out here supporting it. I'll like that shit. I'll retweet that shit. I'm ready to interview you as well, even though you don't like me. Make this shit happen. Make this shit happen, guys. Thank you all for tuning in today. It's been an absolute blast with Scant. Any last words you want to say before we close this thing up?
Follow Camille on Twitter at, I think it's Case Chick.
Both our tags are in the video. Don't worry. Scant, follow me. Give us that clout, baby. We want to be famous.
No, but whoever got to the end, thanks very much. That already shows like a significant interest in these issues, and I think that's you can like. I'm pretty sure anyone who got this far is the kind of person who will be willing to do the kind of reflection we talked about, and if you just do that, that's already you're already making a difference.
I like that. We're gonna end on that. Thank you all for tuning in. Goodbye.